welcome to Woman Crush
Every Day,
where we discuss queer media, especially when it is black and especially when it is woman. I'm your host, Tang B, aka Sean B. Scribe.
And I'm your host, Allison, aka Al Wu.
And today we are going to be talking about My Name is Pauli Murray.
Yes, so make sure you go ahead and subscribe. If you haven't already done that, tap in with us and catch up on all this great black, queer, woman, magical content that we drop on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Happy New Year, y'all.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We made it.
Yeah, we made it.
2022.
We made it. We had a solid 2021. Thanks so much for the folks who already have been rocking with us, vibing with us during our lives and all this good stuff. But we are happy to get into the first video of the year with My Name is Pauli Murray. Now, you know, this show is a show where we talk about queer media, especially when it is black and especially when it is woman. However, we're talking about Pauli Murray, and in a lot of ways, Pauli Murray's, maybe these titles don't exactly align if you do know who Pauli Murray is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In history changes the labels that people use, the labels that are available. So rather than just talking around it, let's just say a little bit about who Pauli Murray is before we actually get into the documentary, which is titled My Name is Pauli Murray. Mm-hmm. So Pauli Murray was actually super awesome. So
badass.
Go back and research Pauli Murray even after watching this documentary. Lawyer, civil rights activist, education activist, gender activist.
All the things.
Poet, writer, all of the things. So a few things about Pauli Murray before we get into the film. One is that Pauli had relationships with women, but did not identify as a lesbian. And if you look deeper into Pauli Murray's history and personal things, first of all, Pauli never talked about their personal relationships publicly. Mm-hmm. So all the information that we have about who they were romantic with and what their sexuality kind of was made up of is from like personal diary entries, visits with doctors and psychologists, things like that. Mm-hmm. So Pauli actually was against lesbian identity, and I feel like that's important to say here, and believed that they had undescended testicles or some sort of like male biology within them. Mm-hmm. Also, because of that, we are going to use a variety of pronouns. So like Pauli Murray was a lot of firsts as far as like first woman to do a number of things. Mm-hmm. And so because Pauli has those titles as like the first woman category, we'll use she, her, but we'll also use they, them, and maybe occasionally he, him, because Pauli does some cool stuff in life that bends the gender.
Yes, totally. And I think even to a degree for Pauli Murray, for the memory of Pauli Murray, I want to address that if you watch the documentary, you will see that she had a very strong stance against being called black. Yeah. And she grew up in a different time, you know what I'm saying? It was a very different time. So there were more academicians and people who thought scholars, you know what I'm saying, all these folks around at the time who agreed with the idea that Negro was a better term to identify black people. And throughout the documentary, she faced pushback in her academic career from her students and other folks, who were part of the black arts movement and, these black power movements, and wanting to be branded as black folk. So, we're for today's time, for 2022, Pauli Murray is a black woman. Or black them. Yeah. But I think at this point, if Pauli Murray was around today, I don't think the Negro argument would still stand. I think, Pauli Murray would have come around. So for the sake of that, Pauli, we are going to call you black, and God rest your soul.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll say Negro, but
I'm not calling nobody Negro.
That's fair.
And I don't even have like a problem with the term Negro. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't think that it is a terrible pejorative, but
It's not up to date.
I didn't grow up with that. I didn't grow up with that.
The bomb. I mean,
Exactly.
I did grow up with that, but we not saying that no more.
That's hilarious.
It's not the bomb.
Yeah, so Pauli Murray, I'm not calling you Negro, but I get it.
I respect it.
I respect it because that's where we were at the time.
All right, well, let's get into our favorite things about Pauli Murray based on the documentary. So, yeah, from the film, what was your favorite moment?
Man, so this was, I mean, it's such a powerful film. I think watching it the first time through is just, I'm sitting here jaw dropped throughout the whole movie. It's really difficult to identify a favorite part because you're watching the whole movie like, how do I not know this person? Like, how is this person completely written out of history in so many ways? Like, so the whole movie is my favorite part. It's like finding out about somebody that, or seeing a mirror of yourself that had been denied to you so long. So, I thought that was great. But if I really had to be specific, I think, my favorite parts of the movie were kind of the funny parts. Were the funny parts of Pauli Murray. To me, the parts that were funny were seeing the ways in which, okay, like the very first scene. Okay, I
love it.
The very first scene, this documentarian is recording Pauli and is saying, say your name for the camera, or take your glasses off so we can get a portrait. So, Pauli takes her glasses off, and then this dog comes up. She owns a dog, and is, I guess, trying to mess with them in it, and get some attention. And so Pauli's like looking directly at the camera and telling the dog, like, sit down.
Still trying to smile and pose.
Right, trying to put this picture. I was like, yo, this is hilarious. I think it's just like seeing that this person is a very serious person. Like, Pauli's very serious and passionate about her work.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of funny to see how even when you're super serious all the time, there's just funny moments that come out of that. So I think that seeing those moments were funny.
I love that moment, and just so adorable. Because at this point, when they open it, Pauli had to be, this was like, what, probably early 90s before she died? They might have been getting this footage. So she's like older in age at this point, and just adorable.
Wait a second. What year did Pauli Murray die?
92, 97, 95.
Oh, man.
It was in the 90s.
See, I'm messing up. I'm thinking that footage was like black and white, though. With the dog? Who knows? I don't think it was the 90s. I don't know. Maybe somebody had a black and white film camera in the 90s. Very possible, but plausible.
She was older, though. She was older.
Yeah.
She wasn't like 20.
Yeah. This is an older season. Run the gamut.
Okay. I think my favorite moment was when Pauli graduated from this Hunter Women's College in the Depression, which is like, it's somebody who graduated in the recession.
Yes, worst time to graduate.
Don't do that.
Worst time.
And so it's the Depression, and Pauli has no money, has like starving, nothing, no job, no work, no coins, and decides to do what a lot of boys are doing, which is like hop on a train and go town to town looking for work. And you just kind of like sleep in jails, sleep wherever people will let you sleep, ask for some food, and Pauli like travels as a boy, and is dressing masculine and kind of has on the traditional like boy clothes of the time, and it's kind of life-saving in many ways. And what they don't mention in the movie is that Pauli ends up doing this with a lady, Peg Holmes, and Pauli travel together as a man and woman couple for a time, but yeah, I just love seeing like the picture of Pauli on the train and like the trousers and the little cap and just looking badass, and like,
yeah,
I'm gonna run wild and do what I need to do, because this is a particular time where I can get away with things that I wouldn't normally get away with.
Yeah, that reminded me of her aunt Pauline, and the term that Aunt Pauline used to describe Pauli and called her boy girl. And I think that was kind of endearing to me as well, because when to see those photos of a young Pauli like dressing masculinely, I just feel like those are like those rare images of those non-traditional women, you know, at the time. Like to, so it was really cool to know, like, wow, your aunt like sees you, respects you, lets you dress and express in ways that are comfortable for you, and really it supports you. So I thought that was one of a favorite part for me too.
That was. I want to come back to the way Aunt Pauline kind of handles Paulie's dressing, and Aunt Pauline is the one who raised Pauli Murray. Pauli was raised by her aunt, even though her mother had some issues and ended up sending her with her aunt and had all right, so woman crush. I think it's obvious who our woman crush
Our woman crush is Pauli Murray. Boom.
So, what's your favorite Pauli Murray like season?
Okay, again, you know, I think the whole movie, I love learning about this person and watching this person grow. But I feel like my favorite season of Pauli Murray from this documentary was her period at Howard, her period at Howard University. So, HU, shout out, you know, Pauli Murray went to Howard for law school. It was, and I'm an alum. That's why I'm actually doing all this. So let me contextualize why I'm saying all this. As a fellow Bison, shout out Pauli for paving the way and being this iconic figure there. But when Pauli first got to Howard, like, they were not accepted. You know, the men who were in the program, like, she was the only woman in the program, and the way that the men treated her, they didn't answer. I mean, they didn't call on her to respond to questions. They just really X'd her out of the whole thing. Like, why do women even go to law school? You know, coming from not just their peers, but from the professors as well. So
just ridiculous. Just being typical. Just raggedy.
Yeah, just really, really trifling. And, but Pauli endured, and in doing so, by her second year at Howard, was top of the class. You know, you saw that she was just crushing everybody, and then they, you know, gave her the respect and all this stuff. Like, all right, Pauli's killing it. But it was Pauli's work and research and writing while she was at Howard that was used later on by Thurgood Marshall and other lawyers to make cases to change the laws to allow black folk and women to have the rights and liberties that we experience today. So that has to be my favorite season, to know that Pauli was doing this incredible work.
Incredible.
In DC, you know,
just
walking down the halls of Howard University. Yeah.
Just
so
a student. Just writing papers to dismantle Plessy versus Ferguson.
You know,
in the spare time.
Yes. And also, they did a sit-in order to desegregate U Street. That was one of the other moments that they talked about in the documentary. So Howard University is very close to U Street, and U Street is a black community. But there was a white restaurant that only served white folks in the district. And Pauli Murray was a part of a group that organized a sit-in to effectively desegregate this diner. And that was like the last segregated spot on U Street. And Pauli Murray was a part of desegregating this space. And that's just like so fire to know. Because as a student at Howard, while I was there, it's like, we went to U Street all the time. Like, U Street is popping. It's a great and like vibrant place to be, and to know that heroes like Pauli Murray were there before to set the tone, you know, to make it that place that it is now, I just think was really, really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely totally crushing over Pauli Murray at Howard.
Nice.
Go for it.
Okay, there's two eras of Pauli Murray that I'm super crushing on. The one is when Pauli went to this women's camp, Camp Terra, that was just for people who were looking for a place to study and grow and change and work, because there was no work because of stupid depression. So at Camp Terra, Pauli ends up meeting Peg Holmes, and the women aren't supposed to be like fraternizing, and Peg was, I think, a counselor, Pauli was just, one of the campers, and they were all of age, so nothing creepy like that. It's not gonna turn into
yeah, these are adults.
No content warning needed here. And so Polly starts like just basically being around Peg all the time. They're hanging out, they're lounging together, they're writing together. Polly actually shares like their writing with Peg, which they said they never do, and his writing is like mushy, very cute poetry with their secret code names in it. And I'm just like, I love that was happening. Mm-hmm. That was happening. This is the early, 1900s, mid-19, like, this is happening already. So we've been here, we've been existing, we've been flirting in the poems. So, boom. And I'm a poet, so that just, like, speaks to, my love language of, put it in the poem, get your girl. The other part that I'm crushing on for Pauli Murray is when they were at Brandeis University, and, Pauli was just like we said, not feeling the term black. She was like Negro with a capital N.
That took me out. That line in the movie is like, that's Negro with a capital N. Like, all right, you better tell him it ain't no lowercase Negroes around here.
No. And the thing is, like, they were fighting for that term. They were fighting to have this like way of being respected on this term. And the new kids were coming in and just like, no, we are about being black, and we have this particular way of protesting, and just there was this disconnect in their understanding of one another. And I just really identified, because I just feel like moving further into the 30s range is where you start to like give less fucks about what people think. And I just really felt the spirit of Pauli of just like, yeah, I hear y'all talking about all that new stuff, but what you don't know is all this like lingual things. It matters. But do you know how much work I've done before we playing games about what we gonna call ourselves? Do you know, like, all the work I put in? Do you know, like, y'all wouldn't be here at Brandeis University without some of the work that I put in?
Yeah.
And I'm not even coming at you like that. I'm just, like, trying to teach this class, and you getting caught up on me saying Negro. Like, no!
Yeah.
And I just think that abstinence and that sticking to what Pauli understood, what she understood, what they understood to be true for them, and how you do things and what it means to be a part of a movement and how you protest, and that clashing with the new ideas that are coming up is something that everybody at every age, if you are into activism, you are going to run into. Just like the new age people with the people who have been seasoned in doing the work, just not always seeing eye to eye. And the unfortunate part is not being able to see past that to get back to the solution. But, I was proud of Pauli in that moment to just stick to like, no, I've been fighting for this. And what I have to share with y'all is good, and you just need to take it. Yeah, that was a nice reflection of, the moment that everybody will come to. So that was my crush moment. Yeah. What can stay and what can go?
I mean, all of this is it's tough to think about what can go in somebody's like life experience.
Yeah.
So I don't think anything should go, but I think about things that were happening at the time. I wish that tension between new generations and older generations, especially around movements and struggle and progressive movements, for liberation. Like, I wish that wasn't such a thing.
Yeah.
I wish that that can go. Young folk really to a degree, I get it, dismantling what was there in order to make a new thing. But I also think just respecting, here, let me reapproach this. I think what can go is the fact that Pauli wasn't ever fully celebrated in the way that Pauli should have been celebrated. Because if Pauli had been uplifted in the way in like with the same measure that Pauli contributed, like there wouldn't have been room for these young folk to come in and disrespect the space.
Yeah.
It would have been like, oh, you the GOAT.
Yeah.
You are already up here. And we saw that from the documentary. We met a couple of students who spoke very highly of Pauli, but the overall opinion you sensed very strongly wasn't good, you know, because Pauli was so resolute in their opinions around those, you know, that identity of blackness. So, yeah, that can go. Because it caused so many problems. I feel like the result of not celebrating this person means that you get to disrespect this person, and that's just not cool. So I think that can go. What can stay? Honestly, all of the dopeness that Pauli Murray like left for us. You know what I think is beautiful that was done is that in the documentary we meet her niece and or her grandniece or something like that. But you know, she speaks about Pauli having all of her records and just taking meticulous notes, having documented everything that, you know, they did throughout their lifetime. And I think that is something that I think should stay for all folks who do work. I was going to say activist work, but I think just overall, like, it's so important to document your experiences and to document your story, because if you don't, who will? Like, if Pauli did not write all of this, if Pauli didn't say already, like, all right, I'm going to have to do all these things in order to know that I know that this story will continue, like, even through all of the sexuality writings, you know, a lot of the writings that Pauli did weren't public writings, but Pauli kept those writings filed and in order and labeled and all of this stuff because, you know, I guess they felt compelled that somebody will see these things at some point, and what will this mean for the future? So what can stay? Document your shit.
Yes.
Document your shit. Tell your story. Write it down. Tell a friend. Get it published. Like, do what you have to do to let your story be known. And that's how I feel.
That's such a game right there, and it actually makes me wish, like, I did a better job of keeping a journal. Like, I love to write, but I don't really journal. And if you don't tell your story, somebody else will.
Mm-hmm. Or they won't. And, you know what I mean? Like, or they won't tell your story. And we can't have it.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. For me, what can go is the things that have been needing to go for a long time. The fact that Pauli went to Howard and was ostracized for being a woman. Here we have the perfect conundrum of somebody who doesn't even necessarily want to identify wholly as a woman being kept out for being a woman. To the point that she got to come up with the term Jane Crow. Just like, you know, it's not enough that I'm ostracized for being Negro, but now I'm ostracized for being a woman too. Like, I would change this if I could. I mean, not me personally. I love being a woman, but Pauli would.
That's what Pauli wrote.
To Roosevelt,
to the president.
Yes, and that was in relation to a different thing, not related to Howard, but Pauli went and applied to the school, and they wouldn't let her in on the basis of sex, and she was like, "I would change it, but to my knowledge,
I can't change it. The closest thing I can change is I can change your mind. I can try to do that." Pauli was dropping these bars. Y'all. Pauli was coming with the heat.
Quotes and bars. Look up Pauli Murray.
Yeah, Pauli was talking that noise, y'all.
Yes,
with it.
Okay, so black men not wanting to be peers with black women, that can go. Feeling threatened by them or whatever the deal was, that can go. People trying to just keep women out of spaces, that can go.
Get it out.
Done with it. I want to come to something that's very particular about Pauli's relationships with women, because Pauli's relationships that we have evidence of are only with white women. There were like 3 women in her time that she kind of was in various degrees of what we would call a traditional romantic relationship. And they were all white. And what is particular about that, because I don't really have an issue with people dating interracially, don't have an issue. That sounds weird. People should date who they fall in love with. You should date who makes you happy. I think ultimately, I just want people to be happy. But the way that Pauli writes about these white women, Irene Barlow, who was like a fellow attorney with her or lawyer, and then Peg Holmes, who was with her at this women's camp, is like their green blue eyes just spoke of gentleness, and the fair skin and the hair, and just all of this like worship of whiteness really reads as like an affinity to white supremacy. And I think it's interesting and it's important to acknowledge that even for somebody who was like fighting vehemently against the system of supremacy, she still internalized like what beauty is, what gentleness is, what a woman is, what a heterosexual woman is that would complement her boyishness, and yeah. So just bringing that to light, that can go this like pining for whiteness.
Yeah. I think there was definitely a lot of evidence throughout the documentary that hinted or that supported Pauli's affinity for heteronormativity. And systems of hierarchy, and just those structures that are also so closely related to the structures of white supremacy that it makes sense why that younger generation of folks were like, hey, something's fishy. Something's fishy. And I think that there definitely was something fishy, but I don't think that it means totally dismantle the whole identity of this person or anything like that. But I definitely got the sense there were a few things that maybe needed some more unpacking. From Pauli's life, So yeah.
What else can go? Is hold on, let me look at this. I'm gonna go to what can stay. So what can stay is Pauli actually getting tenure. That can stay. Now I'm gonna go back to what can go. What can go is y'all telling these wonderful, beautiful Black writers and scholars and educators that they don't deserve tenure. Because this is what happened when Pauli applied for tenure at Brandeis University. He was like looking at his life like, oh, am I going to have enough to retire on? You should not be somebody who helped to dismantle Plessy versus Ferguson, who worked for the National Organization of Women, who helped to form CORE, who worked under, Thurgood Marshall. These who started, refused to get off the bus decades before Rosa Parks, who did sit-ins before sit-ins were even a thing. Like, you shouldn't be somebody who did all of this and then you go to apply for tenure and they said that her writing lacked flair, brilliance, and conceptual power.
Yeah. Like, the disrespect. This person has changed the fabric of America, and you're saying that they don't write with conceptual power.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg put on one of the legal briefings for a law that was passed in favor of women's rights, put credits to Pauli Murray on the briefing. On the briefing. So it's just wild. It's wild that this university would say they don't have enough evidence to give her tenure. Just BS that we continue to see to this day. And that can go. But what can definitely stay is Pauli actually bringing the writings forward, bringing all the evidence forward of why Pauli was deserving, and them having to say, like, you know what, you're right. We do need to give you tenure. You're right. So yeah.
All of that.
There's so much more.
Yeah.
But let's move into queer canon.
Moving to queer canon. Yo, where does this fit in the queer canon? You want to lead? Where does this fit in the queer canon?
Where this fits in the queer canon, I wanna talk about Aunt Pauline.
Cool.
So, first of all, shout out to the aunties out here. The aunties who are accepting the babies, you know, just looking at them like, I see who you are. I love who you are. I just want to shower you with love and acceptance and freedom and space to grow and learn. And Aunt Pauline was like that person. And I love that that is a part of this story. This like, just so beautiful. And Aunt Pauline, I just love that she was just like, you know, you are endearingly my little boy girl. Sorry to people that offends, but I don't think that's how she meant it. I think she was really affirming all of who Paulie was shown to be. But then there was this one thing. So Aunt Pauline allowed Paulie to dress very masculine and wear pants and kind of just, you know, be boyish. And there was one compromise, and that was on Sundays for church, Paulie had to wear a dress. And I just feel like this is a tale as old as time in the like queer community of just like having to compromise how you present in exchange for support. Pretty much that was the price of admission, is like, okay, I'm gonna let you do what you want to do, but on this one day in front of these people you have to prove your womanhood. And that's just gross. It's gross. But I also feel like it's about this larger conversation of what safe space really is, and how there has to be other space that actually prepares you for the rest of the world. And I feel like that was maybe Aunt Pauline trying to help Paulie understand, like, there are ways you will need to conform to survive this. There are ways you will need to conform to live out your faith, because Paulie was a person of faith. So that's another thing. Like, this is a film about somebody who became the first woman Episcopalian priest, and that is what happened for somebody who is, you know, in queer relationship, who is experiencing some gender dysphoria, and who is also experiencing a loving queer relationship through her faith, because when she was in a relationship with Irene, they connected because of their Episcopalian faith together. And so I just think that's really wonderful and interesting that we have this story and that it's a real life story, and I think it's an important one for queer people who are trying to understand how their faith really intersects with their life and can be a driving force for it, but also, you know, can bring up these other points where they have to hide particular parts of themselves in order to just feel accepted in faith community. It's tough.
Oh man, yeah, I wanna. The whole church thing, I think, brings up so many feelings personally, because, and I think for a lot of queer folk, if you grew up with the church, what am I trying to say? The actively going to church. That's not even what I'm. Yeah. I was gonna say something else. Whatever. But the routine. You know, I think building that relationship with God and having that throughout your life, just the stakes are so high. The stakes are so high, and I think Paulie really felt all of that, and I think that contributed so deeply to why Paulie didn't want to identify as a lesbian. You know, why Paulie had to, I mean, and this is speculation a little bit, you know, but I feel like,
we can't know.
Yeah, I feel like that it makes sense, though, that if you are that concerned about how God sees you, that you would do the work. You know, Paulie was a very active person. Paulie wanted to do the work necessary in order to change the world, you know. So I think Paulie's whole repackaging of self to present to people for acceptance, how often we see that in queer community is, I mean, and it's tough because I think in ways we don't see all of the things that repackaging, that internal repackaging that's happening, is that we don't see all of the mental trauma that's going on, you know, all of the hurdles and the explaining to yourself of who you are and who you have to be. I'm glad that there is documentation of this and we have this figure, but it also it just reminds me of the hurt that I felt in coming to terms with being queer, you know, and feeling like, where does my eternal soul fit and match up with how I feel? And yeah, so where does it fit in the queer canon? Like, just where I think folks who are interested in concepts of faith and things around religion and queerness, seeing this documentary, I think it's just fascinating. It's fascinating. This person who's going to the doctor and saying, I feel like a man on the inside.
And can y'all find it?
Can y'all figure it out? Because I know that I'm a man, but I'm not, and I'm still going to be regarded as the first black woman Episcopal priest.
Yeah, first black woman attorney for
all of this. First black woman, woman, black woman, and to be like, I don't necessarily feel like that.
Yeah,
you know,
and still not have a language within the world that accepts that, because I think it's really important to revisit like the time of Pauli Murray and just like what the atmosphere was around queer identity, that it was, in some psychologists' view, accepted that you may have a different gender experience, that gender dysphoria was already a thing, not that specific term, but the idea of it was a thing, whereas same-sex love was seen as a deviance. And, you know, just reacting to years of people being free and trying to come into a system of trying to get people to marry, have kids, follow this particular system, be a part of capitalism, really eliminated this same love acceptance, and that people were getting arrested for being queer. And so even if Pauli at some point was like, okay, maybe I'm part man, I'm part woman, but I still want to be with women, to take on the identity of a lesbian would have been a threat to her being able to work, a threat to her being able to live, to make any money, to have relationships with people, to even have women around her. It would have been a threat to their safety. So I think there's just like so much around what gives us permission to identify in any way and what options are even available to us in society that make us say like, okay, not only can I identify with this, but I could survive identifying in this way. And
yeah, I think around identity and claiming an identity and accepting an identity is like, we watch Pauli claim an identity of Negro at a time when the identity of Negro was changing to black. So all the people who identify with Negro weren't there to tell her story. That ship had sailed, that's gone. So then black folk are like, I'm not telling the story of this Tom. Like, I'm not doing that. And I also think where it fits in the queer canon, I think it's so crazy how this gets missed, because like Pauli Murray isn't really part of the lesbian canon. You know, Pauli Murray's really not, according to how Pauli saw their life, isn't the queer canon. You know, it's like you miss these people. I mean, like, there wasn't a lesbian community to champion for Pauli. There wasn't a trans community to champion for Pauli. There wasn't a black community to champion for Pauli. And I think where it fits in the queer canon is just like how important it is or I guess to me it feels important to identify with something.
So that people can know.
Yeah, so that people can know. And I think in so many ways, I think I hate the identity thing, because I think sometimes it does feel too like trapping. Like, if you lock into something, then it's just like, well, you know, it doesn't necessarily always represent the fullness of a person.
Yeah.
But I think identity is so important in order to find yourself, in order to be able to have conversations with people who are going through what you're going through or feeling what you're feeling. Like, how much happier could Pauli have been throughout their life if they had met a masculine woman who totally identified with all of the things that Pauli was feeling.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. It's a weird thing, but
it's tough.
You know,
I think too. What's interesting is like Pauli is also this very fair skinned, you know, kind of very loosely curled haired person, and so in their family there were like black, Cherokee, white, you know, all kind of things happening. And Pauli, the people who raised Pauli also were very, very fair skinned. Mm-hmm. Many of them passing. And so Pauli's decision to say, like, I am Negro was a decision to identify. Like, Pauli easily could have passed and chosen that route, but was like, no, I'm going to say that I'm Negro, and I'm going to put that on applications when you ask about it, and I'm going to stick with this. So I think it's really interesting, just like, yeah, what would have been the case if Pauli felt like there was more of a supportive community that wouldn't get her arrested, and out of work. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because there was definitely a civil rights movement, but there was not very much space in that civil rights movement for being queer, you know. And man, I wish I actually could have been in the room when Pauli Murray and James Baldwin did this, like
the writing residency
together. And I wish I could just sit there and just
take in that all those conversations. That would have been amazing. Amazing.
I feel like there's so much more that we could say about this film. But ultimately, I feel like you all should just go watch My Name is Pauli Murray. It is available on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
It is free if you already have Prime, so you can watch it. It wasn't that much to rent. Maybe like...
I didn't see that. But I mean, it's usually, you know... rent it. Yeah.
So definitely check it out, and then check out some of the other books about Pauli Murray. So I was able to do it through like free library audiobook apps. You know, Amazon Prime, you can get her books of poetry, her family history, autobiography.
Yeah, Pauli Murray wrote 2 books. One book called Proud Shoes, which is not a like a memoir, like a family memoir. Yeah. And then Pauli's own personal memoir, Song in a Weary Throat. Mm-hmm. So... And
a book of poetry, too, so check that out.
Yeah.
And then there's been a few historians who've written about Pauli Murray, and I'm sure it's just going to continue.
Yeah. Definitely, this is going to be a name that, I mean, I can sense we're going to come to know more of who this person is, this trendsetter, this person who was breaking boundaries and barriers, all this stuff way ahead of their time. But My Name is Pauli Murray. Make sure you check it out and drop some comments, you know, and let us know what you thought of the film. Let us know what you think of this review and all this stuff that, you know, all these conversations. We love watching this content and being able to discuss it with you all. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah. And I just want to say one more thank you to Pamela Alexander and Dr. Kofi, who put me on to Pauli Murray. Because the book Song in a Weary Throat was sitting at Kofi House, the women Center for Queer Women and Girls. Oh my God!
Lesbian women and girls. Or is it queer? Is it queer? I'm sorry. It's queer women and girls. Okay.
It's lesbians, queer women, and girls. It's everybody. If you're a woman
identified queer
women,
Kofi House is for you in Detroit.
It's for you in Detroit.
Boom. We got it.
All right. So watch My Name is Pauli Murray. Tune in, and we'll see y'all next time.
Till next time.
Peace.